Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MakerDAO Scientific Governance and Risk Meeting, number 128, I believe, taking place on Thursday, February 11th at 1700 UTC. My name is Long for Wisdom. I'm the Governance Facilitator at MakerDAO presently, and I'm joined by a bunch of Maker-related people who are probably fed up with me saying this at this point. So yeah, as usual, we've got a bit of an agenda to get through. We've got some updates from people at Makerland. And yeah, I guess I'll just do the usual preamble. If you have comments or want to interrupt, please do. We'd like to hear from people. Please don't be shy. All right, so I think with that, I will start with governance updates, of which is a couple. So let's see, so we'll start with polling last week. So we saw that, so we had 10 polls up last week. We had debt ceiling instant asset access module polls for 6 assets, all of which passed. We had onboarding polls for Link ETH Uni LPs and Uni LPs, which both passed. We had the interim DAO budget poll, which passed, and we had the rates proposal poll that passed. So we should see all of these in the executive tomorrow. Speaking of executives, last week's executive has now passed. Passed a little late on Thursday. Wait, today's Thursday, earlier today. So we saw a little bit less participation than usual in both the executive and the polls, presumably because the crisis of gas on the Ethereum network is now kind of huge. So that's something we'll be kind of keeping an eye on going forwards. Like we're starting to get a little concerned about the prices and the impact on voting and probably other parts of the Maker protocol as well, but I have to worry about voting. So I spoke to smart contracts briefly this week about some like possible emergency measures we could take if we start having problems. So there should be avenues we can like look into if it does get sort of unconscionably bad, which is comforting. Okay, happier news. The MIPs portal we've been working on, that Juan has been coordinating and DSpot have been working on recently, is coming along fairly well. It's currently up at mips.makerdao.com, but that is like a sort of alpha or pre-alpha version. But if you want to get an idea of what it looks like, go and have a look. I believe there's also a feedback button which you can press if you have any feedback at this stage. But we're expecting for that to get a lot kind of a lot more polished and a lot more working in the next few weeks. So looking forward to that. Kind of onboarding work continues, continuing to get Pros and Eli up to speed. Eli is going to have a lot more time soon, so we should start seeing him around more. Specifically, Pros and Eli have been helping to set up the weekly polls last week and this week as well. So they're kind of doing the whole knowledge transfer thing that we need to get redundancy in the governance domain, which is good. Documentation continuing to move forward slowly. I'm going to try and merge some PSM documentation soon so we can link to it in some of the upcoming polls regarding the PSM fees. And then just a final reminder that the governance core units MIPs proposals are up on the forum. And I would appreciate if people could read them and give any feedback that they have. Like it's not like there's not like, you know, there's kind of a lot. I know there's quite a lot of sub-proposals up to various things at the moment, and MIPs generally. So it's a bit of an effort. But yeah, any feedback is very much appreciated. Cool. All right, I think that covers my updates. So maybe we can pass it on to Prose, who's going to give us governance at a glance, an update of the activity on the forum.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Another fine week on the forum. Start off with a little 3-point summary here. We're hoping it would happen before the meeting, but DAI supply is just short of 2 billion right now, so pretty exciting. Got about 18.5 million to go to hit that number. So maybe it'll happen during the meeting. If it does, you'll see me celebrating over here. One exciting thing from the last week, though, is ETH did pass that $1 billion mark, which is super exciting. First of our vault types to have over $1 billion of DAI drawn against it. And likewise, the peg is still looking really solid at VWAP sitting around 1.001. And I posted a little chart, I guess, of, sorry, trying to get better about providing that forum link to governance at a glance, but provided a little chart there just so you can see where the bulk of DAI is trading. Pretty cool tool, DAI Decipher. Anyway, in terms of announcements, we had vote tracking get announced this week, which is really exciting. The beta version of that is up, so you can see kind of what addresses are voting and how much is voting where. It's a pretty exciting tool, one that I'm sure we'll be using even more in the future. So check that out and the forum posts for the details on it. And the other kind of cool announcement, this took place more in the chat than in the forum, but Yearn Finance recently used a MakerDAO vault to make some of their providers whole again after an exploit targeted a YDAI pool. So that was really exciting to see. As far as active discussions on the forums go, we got a great one on a pre-MIP discussion about a PSM flapper. Andy from the RIS team brought this one. It's basically a proposal talking about using the USDC that comes in from our PSM to buy back and burn MKR tokens. And another cool discussion that's going on is minting new DAI to offset lost DAI. A new user came in and posted about having sent about 10K DAI to a contract address. Obviously isn't going to ever be restored, unfortunately. So discussing the possibility of minting DAI in these objectively lost situations. So go in and weigh in on those if you have ideas. We do have a number of signals from this week. The first two I want to highlight because they're either ending soon or just got extended. First one being Primoz brought the second set of the instant access module debt ceiling parameters for a whole host of other assets. That poll is supposed to end tomorrow. So if you could go give your vote there and we can get it on the executive on Monday, that would be awesome. Likewise, it looks like we're just extended the poll on raising the ETH line, given that we only had about 21 participants as this morning. I'd like to see that number up there a little higher. As far as new polls go, Hexanaut, Sam brought us a couple of really cool ones. The first one being signaling for what the community feels the fee should be on the Flashmint module. That still hasn't come out yet. On-chain, not executive. Thanks along. Sorry about that. But Sam put this out there basically to kind of take down a roadblock for when the flash minting module is ready to go, in that we can already declare what fee we want instituted in there. And Sam also brought one on lowering the tout parameter for the PSM USDC vault. That basically affects the fee we're taking when someone is swapping DAI for USDC. Most of the trades have been going the other way. So this is signaling lowering that to become a little more competitive with some of the pools out there. And finally, our last signal I want to highlight is Alexis brought a signal to turn down the debt ceiling of the stablecoin vaults to 0. A couple options in there also for just starting with USDC. That one is set to expire a week from today. So another one you probably want to get in there and give your opinion on. Anyway, that's all from me in the forums. If you have any comments or things you'd like to see with these rundowns, please let me know. I'm happy to be editing and making them the most useful as possible for everyone. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Primoz. Yeah, if anyone has any questions or comments on things on the forum, feel free to let us know. One thing I was going to add, a couple of people mentioned in the chats the other day that they're having trouble keeping track of some of the signal requests that have gone up recently. If anybody has any suggestions about how we can restructure the forum to make this easier, or if anybody wants kind of advice on how to keep track of things, please let me know as well. All right, I think that covers governance. So let's maybe move on to smart contracts. Chris?
Sure. Yep. Hey everybody, Chris on the smart contracts team. So Long already kind of covered a section that I sometimes do, which is just talking about last week's executive and what's coming up in this one. And he covered like word for word what I was going to say. So I'm going to skip that. We didn't do any work in the collateral onboarding sheet this week. That's just because we have enough queued right now that we didn't have any cycles to sort of spend on it, and we've got plenty of work to do. We are planning on doing the collateral assessments for the UniV2 AVE-F and the UniV2 WBTC DAI. It's coming up, I think by Friday, we should see those in. And then we're also going to try and do FC and WBTC-B. So those are the sort of alternate collateral types for FA and WBTC, so different parameters. And those are both interesting because we don't already have a collateral assessment for those. So maybe we'll use this opportunity to actually get a collateral assessment, technical assessment for each of those. And then as far as collateral to Covan, we're hoping to get MIP21 in on Friday. So we're very, very close to that. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So for tooling, we're iterating right now on DSS exeklib. There's some changes that we want to make. We're sort of like slowly discovering still, what makes that tool super useful. And for MIP45, which is liquidations 2.0, we had some minor updates to the RFC, and we made some sort of small enhancements to liquidations 2.0 on a separate branch right now, which are just like gas optimizations and stuff, but they're the auditors are still continuing to work on the like main sort of code frozen version. So so that work continues, and we've sort of met with them and been working with them as well. And then for MIP21, we did a bunch of work over the last couple of days on MIP21, just suggesting some changes, setting those up for review. Lev has looked at some of those. I think we're still waiting on maybe an opinion from Lev about one of our changes, and also from Will. And we're looking at the unit tests and integration tests to just sort of finish that up so that we can deploy it on Friday to Covan. Matt, you're on the call. I'll just mention we'll do the testing of the conduit probably sometime on Friday. And then for MIP22, there is an outstanding PR there that we have to review. It was some changes made to that we had suggested, and we just we're still like cooking with fire on MIP21, so we're pushing through on that, and then we'll flip over to MIP22. For security work, there was some defining of the security roadmap and the mission statement, and also documenting like a tutorial for formal verification. And there's a couple DEFCON spells we have. These are our spells, in case you're unfamiliar. They're spells that we use in case of emergency. We get them all pre-deployed and ready to go. We have to make some updates to those. And we need to add the UniV2 DAI USDC to that. Actually, we're going to make a different change. We're going to detect whether or not the stablecoin is even there, and fix those. So those will be deployed, I don't know, in probably on Friday or something, or we'll get it all ready to go and then try and deploy it on Sunday when gas is cheap. And there was a bunch of research, and I think we're pretty well converged on a solution for like PAX-G and USDT. So these are fee charging tokens on transfer. USDT doesn't have it turned on yet, but in theory they could. And so there's a few changes that we need to accommodate there so that we don't like our users don't get double charged on fees when adding them. And that'll open up a bunch of other types of collateral that do this trick to our system. And we're building a factory for deploying the flips and the joins. Gas is getting so insanely expensive. I think the collateral types last week cost us like $2,500 just to deploy the flips and the joins for them. So it's getting pretty crazy. And Sam had shared the FlashMint module as well. So so we'll be looking at that shortly. Anybody else on the smart contracts team have anything, or does anyone have any questions?
That was pretty comprehensive.
Hey, I got a quick question for anybody from the smart contract team. So with obviously everyone asking questions about L2s, what would be the best response for anybody for the community or outside the community who asks where Maker is with regards to L2s?
So right now, I mean, we are focused entirely on these real world assets and then some of the other things that have been voted in. It would be nice to be able to focus some efforts on L2 research. I know some other teams inside of the foundation have been doing some research on it as well, but I don't know if we can announce anything yet. So we don't have a published solution yet, but it is on the agenda, and I would encourage governance to maybe prioritize that research as well.
Brian, I think this would be a great core unit. So I don't know if you developers, you probably know people that are better suited to, or that want to tackle this issue, or maybe a tweet from one of those.
And I mean, we would relish the opportunity for R&D as well. Right now, we're kind of grinding on all of these MIPs that are coming through.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I can actually give a little bit more color on the L2 research that is happening inside of the foundation. There are two things that are ongoing. One is that we have been doing some research and thinking about ways to deal with the fact that there are many L2 solutions, and there are many ways of integrating with those L2 solutions, and it might not be clear for regular users, like which are the official quote-unquote integrations and which are not the official Maker integrations. And of course, that kind of trust issue comes with security implications, which led us to believe that would be good if the community would have an evaluation framework to do, I guess, express some opinions and taking a point of view about how good Maker L2 solutions should be made and what they should look like. Have these discussions, see if there is a consensus as to what a good solution would look like, and then if there is consensus and there are principles that we can express, that we then also subscribe to those as a community and endorse those principles. You know, whether that comes in the form of official L2 DAI versions or more general principles, all that is TBD, but these kind of discussions have been going on. So that's one part, and from that may come a proposal to for an evaluation framework that might be used to start talking about these L2 networks. And then the other part is that we have been looking more from a practical point of view, what it would look like if we do a DAI integration for one L2 solution in particular. I'm not going to give too much details about that one because I'm not sure what the communication strategy is of the team that is involved. But I just want to mention that it is happening. So this is a much more practical approach where we're looking into the nitty-gritty details, not just the high-level strategy aspect. And I would expect results from those, or like at least discussion starting on the forum. I shouldn't do this because I'm talking on behalf of other people, but my personal gut feeling is that within a few weeks, like 3 weeks to a couple of months at the very latest, these discussions will start popping up, and from there on out, things could accelerate. But that is a rough status update on the ongoing L2 work within the foundation.
Cool, thank you, Wouter.
Yeah, I think that I think everyone's slightly comforted to know that it's not like at least on someone's radar. So that's appreciated. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, and I would add one thing to that.
Yeah.
Please don't listen to this and conclude that, oh, the foundation is working on it, so I shouldn't be. If there are any other initiatives or people with an idea of how we can approach this, then you should definitely go ahead and continue to work on that, regardless of the work that is happening within the foundation. I can assure everyone that we don't have all the answers at the moment, so there's a lot of input that we can get and feedback and ideas from the community, so don't hold back.
Yeah, so again, repeating what I said and echoing Wouter's and Brian's comments, I think that this is something that governance would pay for. It's a matter of organizing the budget, getting it approved, and having a facilitator and a core unit organizing it. But I think it's totally doable, and we should definitely think about doing it.
Yeah, so I think if anyone knows anyone who's interested in building L2 solutions for Die Alpha Maker, please refer them like to the forum or to the chat. We can help walk them through stuff like getting budgets and all this sort of stuff. All right, if that concludes smart contracts and questions, we can move on. Cool. Right, Nick, would you like to give us an Oracle's update?
Cool. Yeah. So we're going to be deploying the Aave, or sorry, not Aave, the Link ETH and Uni ETH LP token oracles later today. So I think those are going into the executive, into tomorrow's executive. Not looking forward to that because each of those contracts is going to cost like $400 to deploy. You know, that's just kind of how the world works right now. Kind of crazy. In terms of assessments, we're working on the CF drop assessment. We're working on wrap BTC DAI assessment and a few other ones. Let's see, on the L2 side of things, I think I can contribute a little bit to that discussion. So we've been working lately to integrate Starkware into the oracles, and you know, for DYDX's upcoming launch, since they're going to be launching on Starkware, so I think that'll be cool for us to kind of get a little bit of experience working with Starkware functions and behaves, and what kind of the benefits and drawbacks are there. So we are kind of experimenting with L2. You know, once optimism gets going, maybe we can look a little bit in that direction as well, because I'm sure we'll have customers of the oracles who are going to be transitioning to L2 as well. Yeah, I think that's it on my end. Actually, maybe we should talk a little bit about gas, and oh yeah, and audits. Okay, so the ABDK audit for the LP Oracle is underway. So we expect to get that back in just over a week, and then we'd have to incorporate the feedback, and then maybe the community could consider raising the debt ceilings for the LP tokens. So that's looking good. The other thing is we should, I think Water brought this up earlier, but we should probably be talking about ways to mitigate gas usage for the oracles. It's really crazy right now. I think for those of you who didn't read a comment, we're coming up on, if the current gas prices continue, it would be 16 million a year just for gas prices, right? Which is absolutely insane. So I think there's some things that we can do, but we need to kind of decide as a community what we're willing to do and what we're not. So right now we update most assets on a kind of 1% threshold. So every time the price changes by 1%, we'll update. And then we have certain assets, right, for very large vaults. So for example, ETH and wrap BTC that are on a much stricter interval. It's a 0.5%, right? So it's that's kind of crazy right now, right? So what are some things we can do? Well, we could up the threshold for assets that don't see much usage to a 3, 4, maybe even 5% threshold. So that would cut down on the cost significantly, right? But risk would also need to be consulted, right? Because there's technically with the existing collateralization ratios, right? If the Oracle price doesn't update, that can be like a 5% discrepancy, right, to the actual trading price. So that's something to take into account. Another alternative, right, is that we just start delisting some of the vaults that just aren't seeing much usage. I'm personally not a big fan of that approach, right? We've spent a lot of time integrating these assets, and just because they don't see any usage now doesn't mean that things can't just suddenly start to become very popular, right? Like I'll give you an example, right? With the with things like yield farming, right? That type of gamification made some assets all of a sudden, very popular, right? On Compound, for instance, right? With comp farming. So I do think that there are external factors at play here that can all of a sudden really boost the demand for one of these assets, and I would hate for us to kind of miss out on that. But yeah, that's definitely another option as well. We're definitely doing research in terms of what can we do to reduce the gas footprint. So for example, one thing you could do is start utilizing zero knowledge proofs, right? They kind of have a constant gas cost for verifying a proof. I think right now it's about like 5 million gas, which is a lot. But you could technically update a bunch of oracles at once, which could save some gas depending on if how many oracles you're trying to update. But again, that kind of comes with issues of if you're trying to keep a certain price update sensitivity, right? We talked about this 1% figure. Not all of them are going to need to be updated at the same time. And so in those cases, the gas cost for verifying the proof, right, the 5 million gas, it may actually not be worth it if you don't have enough prices you're trying to update at a single point in time. So there's no real magical bullet here. It's not like so for example, I can assure you Chainlink is spending probably just as much, if not more than us, because they're not very gas efficient. So it's an industry-wide issue. It's not specific to our oracles, but it's something that my team is going to be looking at in earnest in the next few months, because the current situation, I mean, it's just not sustainable.
Great, thank you for that.
Hey, I got a quick
sorry,
question. Sorry, long. Nick, I got a quick question, and going to switch a little bit of the gears here and not concentrate on gas so much. But, I was listening to this podcast about one of my favorite subjects lately, NFTs, and they had Rack, the artist, and Trevor McFreedes, I think is his last name, who invented that girl robot, little Makilla, I think. I don't know, something like that. Anyway, she's got like 3 million Instagram followers. And well, one question that came up was like, what's missing for NFTs? And one of them was obviously an exchange like Uniswap, right? Where I can trade my hash mask for a little Makili, whatever her name is, NFT. How difficult would it be to, and actually the reason why I'm bringing this up is because somebody said that they are predicting that Maker is going to be the first one to offer vaults for NFTs, which I was like really happy to hear, right, on a podcast. But how difficult would it be to have a price oracle for NFTs if that does occur, if we head in that direction?
I mean, I love that there's rumors about us, being the first to do anything. Usually we're like the last to do anything. So that's sounds like our public image is flipped. So that's cool. But in terms of how do you price an NFT, I mean, that's a difficult problem, right? I mean, most NFTs are very illiquid, right? The potential for manipulation, if you only have one exchange, right, where this is being traded is just massive, right? Like, imagine someone is hoarding little Michaelas and then manages to kind of corner the market and drive up the price. And if they wanted to sell all of their little Michaelas, they would just crash the entire price to zero, right? But if they now borrow and Maker against all of them, right, it's almost like a way to like liquidate, without experiencing the slippage. So I would say it's very tricky to price NFTs, right, in a way that can't be manipulated. And I'd say the risk to the system is also quite high because, what is the like NFTs are kind of trending right now, and I think that's great. We need to have more use cases on Ethereum besides just finance, right? Finance can't be the only thing. But the underlying value of these things is extremely questionable, right? They can be really fun. But let's take a CryptoPunk as an example. Right now, they had a price spike and they're all kind of trading around, I think, like $10,000 at a minimum or something like that, which is super awesome. But let's say the market, crashes and goes to a bear market in 6 months. What are CryptoPunks worth? When people are not feeling very rich, when people are very risk off, is a CryptoPunk still going to be $10,000? I highly doubt it. I think you go back to seeing like, $1,000 or $500 CryptoPunks. And it's going to be very sudden. It's not like a smooth kind of process, and that makes it very difficult in terms of both pricing and in terms of liquidation risk. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not very feeling very good if the community was like, you guys need to do NFTs now. I would want to see the market and the liquidity for NFTs built out a lot more.
Yeah, that makes sense. And even if NFTX does their sort of like hedge fund vehicle of a bunch of different NFT collections, and I think Blackpool too of State DAO, they're going to do the same thing. They already bought this Mbappe, if you're into soccer, from PSG. They paid 100 and something thousand for it, right? So that also wouldn't work in the short term, right? NFTX.
Yeah. Like I said, we want to see the market for these NFTs kind of mature and develop a bit more before, like we should not be a first mover. I don't see an advantage here to being a first mover. It's just much too risky.
Sounds good, man. Thanks for the commentary.
Yeah, I know that's probably not what you wanted to hear, but
Oh, no. I'm thinking the same thing. I would love to see a hash mass trade for, an NFT punk, crypto punk, but yeah, it's not going to happen anytime soon. It was nice to hear though that, it was Rack actually, if you guys know him, that said that Maker would be the first one to, to offer the ability for me to take my crypto cat and get a 2,000 DAI loan. But yeah, anyway, let's switch gears here.
Well, I'm glad we have Rack in our camp.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that, Nick and Frank. Always interesting discussions that come out of your questions. All right, I think we're going to jump forward to MIPS at this stage because Charles has to leave at the top of the hour. So we'll come back to risk after that. Charles, are you good?
Yes. Hello, everyone.
There you go.
Oh. Can everyone see my screen?
Looks good.
All right, so given that we don't have an active governance cycle this month, this review will basically just be an overview of all the current proposals in conception and RFC, as well as some active pre-MIP discussions, and then an overview of just some collateral onboarding updates. So in terms of the proposals in the conception phase, we have MIP 44, which is a reward join adapter, aka reward join. So this MIP proposes a generic vault solution for all tokens with reward. It may not be an official MIP, so this is why it's still in conception, because it's still reviewing the format and the general content of it with Alexis. So hopefully it will either change status this week or be combined into another MIP that has already been proposed from Alexis. In terms of RFC, we have a total of 33, actually 34 now, because David just updated another amendment MIP in the RFC stage, which is incredible just to see the progress we've had over the past couple of months, and the community activity is just really heartwarming. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of the MIPs themselves. MIP 26 doesn't necessarily need that introduction, but it is the governance contract redesign that has been discussed thoroughly over the past couple of months. We have the MIP 31, so that active reserve AMM by Alexis. Says proposals for an active reserve based on the UniV2 contract. We have the PSM for the compound mixed exposure 32. It's essentially just an extension on the PSM with leveraging USDC via DAI using CDAI. We have MIP 33, the Maker price stability module, which allows governance to defend an MKR price by pre-allocating DAI to buy at that predefined level approved by governance. We have the pretty well-known KEG streaming payments module, MIP 34 by Sam. This proposal provides that smart contract implementation for streaming payments to Maker. And MIP 35, which is that PSM compound mixed exposure with the addition of farming capabilities on top of it. The next few are MIP 36, the PEG stability for compound governance DAI leverage. So this proposal defines a PEG stabilizer controlled by governance, which uses the flash minting technique of MIP 25 with the other proposed MIP 35 and 32 for DAI lending to leverage MakerDAO's position on CDAI compound. MIP 37 is the static reserve for governance, so it defines a static reserve for which you can receive tokens from anyone of any contract and allow governance to withdraw them over time. MIP 38 is the DAO primitive state, so it's part of the MIP set that Juan and the working group proposed. So it defines all the state related to core units, budgets, and facilitators of core units. Additionally, there's the core unit framework as part of that MIP set, which defines the framework for managing core units, modifying them, and overview of the DAO primitives and how it relates to that. And we also have the budget framework for the facilitators for managing their budgets, modifying them, all within that same MIP set. And lastly, within that set is the framework for defining the sub-proposal process for managing facilitators onboarding modifying them, and so on. Outside of that MIP set, we have MIP 42, which is a proposed compensation for MakerDAO contributors. I believe this is by Andrew Bourbon, and it proposes to pay contributors partially in time-locked MKR to increase the value returned to contributors and align their interests with the core principles of MakerDAO. MIP 43 is the term lending module proposed by Alan, I believe, from Yield. And it is a maker module to buy and hold tokenized fixed rate, fixed term loans to maturity to encourage fixed rate lending market in DeFi. We have the long awaited MIP 45, the liquidations 2.0, which was previously discussed. So it's a proposal that defines and proposes a completely new liquidation system for the Maker protocol. We have MIP 46, the parameter proposal groups proposed by Long, and this basically just proposes the formalization of parameter proposal groups to be created and allow them to do research and propose changes to those parameters. MIP 47 is a new proposal as well, which is a multi-sig wallet management proposal. So it defines the requirements for creating this multi-sig wallet that is ultimately verified and recognized by Maker governance in the community. We have MIP 48, which is also new, and it is about streaming payments via the KEG module, which I mentioned earlier. So it describes how to use the KEG and the method for streaming data to various addresses at a defined rate. And lastly, for MIPS, we have MIP 49, which is governance rewards. And this proposes the creation of governance rewards that would allow the MKR community and holders for locking their MKR tokens in governance and get rewarded for it. So the last three were actually proposed by Pros or Payton. He's been doing a lot of hard work on these MIPs, and it's really great to see. So thank you for that. And we have a bunch of different sub-proposals in RFC as well. The first one I've mentioned before, it's for onboarding a new collateral type backed by B protocol. And then we have 4 various MIP amendments related to the MIP set for the DAO framework, or the DAO parameters MIP set for changing the previously defined concepts for MIP editors and governance facilitators and how they interact, emergency state reactions, and so on. Then there's a bunch of core unit onboarding proposals for governance and risk. So onboarding a core unit budget, onboarding the core unit itself, and the core unit facilitator onboarding formally for both the risk and governance teams, as well as the real world finance team. So these are proposed by Long, the risk team, and Seb for the real world finance side of things. And yeah, due to the lack of space, I wasn't able to do shorts like TLDRs of these proposals, but I can link to them in the forums after this. Now, in terms of pre-MIP discussions, we have a couple new ones, mostly just repeats and active discussions on the most popular ones in the past, but the most newest one is the PSM flapper. So this is suggesting any improvements or changes to MIP 35, as it is also in RFC, so it can be changed. And we also have the vaults with the liquidation ratio less than the CR, which has been pretty active over the past couple of weeks. And the other recent one was the collateralization of commodities for purposes of financing duties and tariffs. So that seems like a very interesting one. I suggest checking it out. And of course, we have the constant discussion of the liquidation system redesign and the technical summary of it, paired with the actual proposal of that MIP 45 going on in the forums. And lastly, there's the delegation of authority pre-MIP discussion as well. All right, so in terms of collateral onboarding updates, right now we have 2 collateral onboarding governance polls live. That's for the Link ETH and Uni ETH, Uni V2 LP tokens. And we have 2 proposals awaiting, oh wait, sorry, ignore this. This is ones from last week. Pending these proposals pass, they'll be awaiting the executive vote this Friday to officially be on board to make a protocol. And since we don't have an active governance cycle this month, we do still have the activity of the community greenlight polls. They will be up for 2 weeks, and we have a total of 12 proposals. As you can see, a lot of them are LP tokens, but we also have a revote for Reno, as they have made a couple updates to their application and have had conversations with the community. So we felt that it will be eligible for resubmission and a revote from the MCure community. And yeah, that's about it from me. So I'll pass it off to the next agenda item.
Great, thank you for the update, Charles. Yeah, just to speculate that the next set of greenlight polls is going up on Monday and will be for the 2-week duration rather than having 3 days left.
Yeah, so yeah, they'll be up for 2 weeks and end on March 1st at the beginning of the March governance cycle.
Yep. Cool. All right, we may have a little bit of time to discuss some of those MIPs in more detail at the end of the call. But for now, let's get through the rest of their updates. So let's see, risk. Primoz, should we give me the updates?
Yep. Yeah. So regarding collateral evaluations, we're posting another 2 UniLP evaluations this week. This would be Wrap Bitcoin DAI and Aave ETH. We posted, this week we posted depth ceiling instant access module parameters for smaller vault types. This should go into on-chain poll next Monday, and then if confirmed, we should have all vault types using this module, apart from UniLPs, where we also plan to propose this parameter soon. And for stablecoins, we already suggested that this vault type, this module wouldn't be really applicable due to DAI liquidity, crunch reasons, and so on. Lately, we're also monitoring the growth of ETH depth exposure. As was mentioned, Rates Group might propose another rate increase on ETH. The last one wasn't implemented yet, but should be this Friday if confirmed. And the idea would be to try to lower the pace of depth growth there. Simultaneously, we're running simulations on ETH vault type. So this would be the new vault type with higher liquidation ratio. And the idea would be to try to stimulate vault users, ETH vault users, to migrate to safer vault type, which would be ETH, or just try to get new DAI minting from it to be done on ETH, on the safer vault type. The strategy could be a bit questionable because it doesn't seem that borrowers are very rate sensitive currently. So it remains unclear what kind of spread between ETH and ETH would need to be made for users to really move to a vault type that's actually less capital efficient, although cheaper, right? We also made a report on auctions this week using this year's data. In summary, there was, I think, 150 auctions this year. Maker collected more or less all penalty fees, so about half a million on all vaults. It also seems that vaults were getting appropriate amounts of collateral back, but there seemed to be one auction though where Maker didn't collect a full amount of penalty fee, and this was one auction on DAI ETH UniLP vault that was liquidated, where there was only one bidder at the time, and this raises some concerns how many keepers actually bid on UniLP auctions. And this is kind of important if we are to increase depth ceiling on UniLPs after Oracle audit. So we are thinking of increasing minimum bid increase parameter, which is called BAC, and perhaps and potentially also a penalty fee. And this would hopefully attract more keepers. Because on one hand, because of higher BAC or this minimum increase, there's a higher incentive for keepers to bid. And if there's a higher penalty fee, vault owners might be more cautious of not getting liquidated. Additionally, we'll also try to get a bit more, to do a bit more PR about this potential change around DeFi. because yeah, this would hopefully attract more keepers on board to bid on this type of auctions. And that's pretty much it. Going forward, we're mostly focused now on liquidations 2.0 and just doing our other regular risk-related work. So that's all.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, looking forward to, well, I guess, well, I'm looking forward to lots of things, but I'm looking forward to seeing what sort of parameters come out from risk in terms of liquidations 2.0. Yeah, it should be interesting. All right. If there's no questions, then we'll move on to real world finance. I suppose I should call you now.
Yes, thanks. So 3 points this week. One is that we are continuing to work with legal to find how to improve the infrastructure of real world assets. But that will be a long-term process. It will be mainly important when we increase the size of the whole investment. We currently are working on 8 collaterals for the next few months. It's not something that will be quick, as we still have 3 collaterals that are waiting for be in production. One thing that is important is that we are working on ease the onboarding process for asset originators, because obviously most of the time asset originators are from the traditional finance, and they don't understand all the MIP 6, MIP 13, and all the MIP stuff, and the DeFi stuff in general. So we have now a nice sheet to explain all the process to them. It will be, I think, on the forum very soon. We are continuing, in particular, to discuss with People Company that was green-lighted not so long ago, to provide something that might be better suited for both parties. And we have started to work on what is the implication of term loans, because in the case of People, it's something we are working on, meaning we are lending for a fixed rate for a given amount of time. That's also something that was put on the forum with FYDI. And what are the implications? Because obviously, if you make a promise to lend for a long period of time at a fixed rate, if the DAI supply decrease, that might be an issue, what we call a liquidity issue. So some research should be done in this direction to see if it's possible at all, if it's a big risk, and if there is a risk, what is the limits of the risks that we can take. And that's about it. If you have some questions, happy to answer.
Looks like no questions. So thank you, Seb. Yeah, we can always come back to questions and discussions later. All right, first though, let's see last of our updates. So operational support, is this one or Amy this week? Amy?
That's me.
Cool.
We just started, we're going to start posting our updates on the forum, so you can see them in a thread and go to all the links, and I'll just give you the highlights. For the Know Your MIP, we did do the KEG last Friday, and then the long-term lending module from Alan from Yield Protocol and Lev, who kind of co-wrote that. Both highly recommended to check it out. The recordings are there. And then with collateral onboarding that's happening next Wednesday is Fortunify, which is the yield and lending protocol for tokenized real world cash flowing assets. And then a huge chunk of ours, we've been working mostly on core unit stuff. So starting with the community call, that was Frank and Juan and Imeo and Pros actually. Also another recording where they kind of broke down the unit and answered some questions. The second one, section is there are, as you see, a few MIPs and sub-proposals. So the framework itself, the core unit framework itself, risk, governance, real world finance. suggest kind of leaving comments and reading through it one final time before it goes into a frozen period. I believe the end of next week, correct me if I'm wrong. So kind of try to get to that before it goes through and leave comments and stuff. We did have 2 new drafts posted in the 2 new core unit drafts, the growth core unit by Nadia, and then marketing core unit by Seth. Also recommend checking those 2 out. And then we do have a few that are still in draft that was just posted earlier. And so we have the smart contracts, we have a front end, both written by Derek, and then strategic communications, PR, and marketing by Kathleen. This is kind of an interesting point. We have Seth, who also commented that it's not supposed to be competitive to Kathleen. It's just a different kind of approach and is meant to kind of compare and create those boundaries. So if you do see that there's a core unit that's created, and it's not that you can't create or propose that core unit, but it is recommended that you check out if someone else has done that written or kind of chatted about that core unit, and see if there are redundancies or overlap. And if there is, that's again, okay, but just making sure people are going to ask you kind of those similar questions. And then Juan and I are also working on our core unit as well. I always encourage kind of people to go back to IMEO's core units I wish existed, stuff like talking about L2. This is kind of where all the brainstorming comes together, and you yourself can just say like, this, man, I wish something like this existed. But actually I encourage you to reach out to your network. Maybe you want to become a facilitator or like build a team around one of these core units. Highly suggest kind of looking, because we all need to all work together and kind of pull together our network to make sure we have all the bases covered. We do have a call coming up with Opolis in 2 weeks. It will be the Tuesday community call that David leads. Details will be coming soon, but that will also, they are another kind of employment service provider. I like to think of it from the perspective of an employee versus kind of the accountable that was by Dennis is more like from an employer. I kind of see it as 2 pieces. And then we had few interesting conversations on some of these core units and topics. So first one is facilitator responsibilities. In some of the questions that we saw, I noticed one of them was just like, what are the expected facilitator responsibilities as a high level? It is written out in the core unit frameworks, but really like the 2 main things to know is that you'd be responsible for the budget. Even if you have someone who's going to do the accounting for your company or whatever, if something like $500,000 goes missing, you're going to be the person who has to kind of communicate and get kind of details on that. And then the second piece is also the expectation to communicate with governance. So, you know, seeing the facilitators on here, things like that, being able to communicate with either monthly reports or things like that, those would be considered the responsibilities of a facilitator. That being said, depending on how you structure your team and how it's organized, you can be, for example, a PM and also be a facilitator. So you might be a PM of your team, but you are the facilitator. So you're essentially just like the person responsible. Keeping in mind that there are responsibilities of a facilitator, right? So if you have a super busy role, you might not always be able to cover both. So you might have a facilitator who's just kind of responsible for communication or things like that. But they don't necessarily have to be 2 separate roles if you're kind of torn between 2, but if you feel like it all folds in and you can do both, you can be both, right? I would say it doesn't maybe make sense to have 2 separate budget line items, like a facilitator budget and then, you know, a PM budget that you would be filling, because you would essentially be playing both roles. Any comments or questions on that, actually, if people had?
I guess I'll just maybe sort of add something like this. So the other key part of the core unit structure is like the core unit mandate, right? So that's kind of the place where facilitators can kind of define any extra responsibilities they want to take on, right? Or want to, I guess, kind of commit to. in terms of what the core unit's going to be doing for governance and for the DAO generally.
And a good example of that is Sev Ventures posted his monthly report. So he gave a January monthly report of what that team has been doing, and maybe in your own core unit, you decide that's also what you want to be responsible for. So some of the things that operational support, for example, we talked about was being able to give a quarterly report of all the core units, what all the kind of total of all the core units have been up to. But yeah, as Long said, it's really also dependent on your mandate as well. The second interesting conversation that's been brought up is facilitator salaries. This was kicked off by Long for Wisdom and his kind of governance budget. You should also check out that thread. There's an interesting poll in there, for example. And generally, there's been conversation around kind of the expected transparency and like what kind of expectations a core unit that you propose or salary that may be that you decide to be public and set might set expectations for other future core units or future facilitators that go into it. And it's also okay, I should add that some teams would rather have that more kind of loose. So they might just say, this is just the general amount that we're going to spend on people. And that's also okay. We're seeing just different structures that that people intend to do. And so I would also open the floor up now if people wanted to kind of bring up any questions or thoughts that they had about facilitator salaries, or if Long, you want to expand on the governance.
I do not.
Or maybe Juan, you want to expand on something?
No, I think that each core unit should choose the level that they want to, and you can go for like super transparent, everything is public, and some companies are doing it in the open out there, and that could be fine. But the fact that it's the blockchain and everything is transparent should not trick you into thinking that that's something that is required. I think Nick brought up the point that sometimes it's harder to negotiate with different people or to attract talent if everything is public. I tend to agree more with his point of view than the radical transparency. But again, yeah, Brian is bringing up another important point where privacy. It's another important thing, right? If you're a developer making $500,000. I don't know, but that could be a security issue at some point. I don't know, your kids going to school,
Yeah,
I don't want
that's actually my recommendation for almost everybody thinking about this. I mean, I think everyone can make their own choices, but I would highly recommend that you sort of scope the budget at the domain team level, that this sort of utopia of radical transparency is actually like a giant, dangerous security trap. You do not want people knowing how much you make individually, especially because the tokens that we get paid out in the space are bearer assets. And so, and a lot of the countries that you guys live in don't let you carry firearms. So you really should think carefully about the operational security of whether or not you want to have, everyone's salaries transparent. So
agreed on the micro level, on the macro level. I mean, the beautiful thing about this core unit aspect is that it has the danger of spiraling into a bureaucracy. And so, there's an aspect to whatever period frequency of having a unit present, whatever the status, whatever it was that was done in the course of the previous month or quarter, and outlining the historic budget was X, and this is the forecasted budget. Because without that, there's an aspect to, all these units that are being put together, they sound great, but it also sounds really expensive.
Yeah,
Wait, go on, Amy.
Just to add to that point, what you said, Matt, an example is you might, for us operational support, we want to kind of add to the conversation if something feels off, like it could be in a positive way, right? So let's say there's this massive budget and we say, that seems kind of low, but we wouldn't be able to say how it feels kind of low if it wasn't kind of even vaguely broken down. Maybe it's the people is too low, or maybe the people is actually too high, and or whatever it is, then we can also provide that input. I should bring up that for kind of the governance budget and why that was also brought up, while the discussion was started around the individual like value that an individual is bringing, it is an opportunity that I think it's a positive thing where people say, hey, actually, I think you're being undervalued, right? That we actually need that kind of commentary in the community so that we ensure that we do have fair pay. Otherwise, if no one says anything, people will be undervalued, and people who are undervalued, from what I see, almost never like speak up or represent themselves. So
yeah,
I think
I'm not even trying to say people shouldn't be paid. It's quite the opposite. I'm thrilled that people get paid. I just want to make sure that it stays efficient.
I mean, I don't want to like cause any alarm, but the smart contracts team has lost a number of developers to better opportunities in the last year. So that needs to be rearranged somehow.
I do agree. Something else that it's important to, and just to maybe to close my point of view here, but if you are using a pseudonym like Long, it's maybe easier to be that transparent. I think we all trust him, and we definitely want to keep him doing what he's doing. I mentioned this several times in the forum, but yeah, not being pseudonymous out there might cause some issues that you might not be aware of today, but you might in the future. So yeah, that's to close my point.
Yep, some good points there on both sides. All right, so we're up to community developments. Anna, do you have an update for us this week?
Yeah, sure. Just worth reiterating again that David hosted a really informative call with some community members, and there's a recording if anyone's interested to learn more about core units and about the different questions that are being discussed, as well as some contributors in community development are also writing core units and sharing them in Rocket Chat. And so there will be more updates in the next coming weeks. But for now, everyone is working on core units and community development as well. And that's all for this week.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so I think that brings us to the end of our updates. That's 1/4 hour, so they're definitely going longer. But if anyone has any questions or wants to continue any of the discussions that we brought up during this call, now's the time. You can maybe spend like 10-15 minutes in general QA or discussions.
Are we planning, going back to the budget just for 1 second, are we planning to have like an aggregate view of what the contemplated budget would be for all of the units at some point?
So that's the minimum detail that you need to include in a core unit, right? So there's the budget implementation, which is the number that the protocol will pay out. So that's the minimum that you have to disclose. And then there's the budget breakdown, in which you can go as detailed as you want. But again, some aggregation is also fine. Like for example, saying salaries or expected salaries are this, but we're also including growth for, I don't know, 3 more engineers. And then again, you don't need to use the whole budget that you've been assigned, right? So I hope that clarifies the issue.
That's when you submit it into the forum. I'm more talking about on a reoccurring basis, just viewing like this call as being a management call, and fast forward the video 2 years from now, what would we want as a collective to see on a reoccurring basis? That's really what I was getting at. Each individual, sure, but are we going to have at some point like an aggregate slide that says we're currently spending, very similar to what Sebastian put in the last presentation, where it was, this is our income. I'd love to see what our expenses are going to be in aggregate.
Yeah, totally.
That was the quarterly
Oh,
report
go
that I
ahead.
had kind of mentioned. One would be, I think there's 2 phases. One, which is what are the budgets that are coming in? So we do actually have like a good 2-month kind of given how core unit proposals work, we would have 2 months to understand like how much we would be required to spend, and then we would actually see like what we're spending currently. So that's the goal, to have those two things.
Wouter also says he would not want to be in a hiring interview for 3 engineers that know the budget for the 3, assuming that it's a, I don't know, a zero-sum game or something. So again, Wouter, you can say, hey, we're planning on growing 10 engineers, and then you're hiring a couple, right? I guess that you can start doing the math, but potentially there's buffers, there's different things that you're considering, and again, you can ask for more and then use less. So it's not 100% transparent or visible if you don't want to.
So we maybe had go ahead, Frank.
No, I was going to change the subject then, if that's okay. Because something interesting came up this week with, well, not with Seth, but Seth Goldfarb. Sorry, Seth, if I chopped up your last name. He brought up the code of conduct, and you know, something interesting happened this week. Obviously, I'm sure some of you heard, with Blockfolio, and it became a hot mess for them. Where the founder, Sam, had to go on social media and try to answer some serious questions. So I guess my question to the community is, how do we handle code of conduct for core units? Is that something that each facilitator should set precedents, or is that something that like someone from operations is going to kind of provide an outline? I mean, how does that work in a DAO, I guess, is what I'm asking. Or do we just handle it as we go?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I mean, I think if we don't set up something in advance, then we will handle it as we go. And I think best practices will kind of evolve from that. Yeah, I think it's something like everyone has to deal with, right? You just kind of, yeah, I think it's best to take it as it comes, at least to start with. But again, others could have different opinions.
Yeah, I think for the most part, we have a lot of really good people here, so I'm not worried about that. Just, I guess, as we grow, right? Yeah. Yeah, so that's the way I see it. I think we should just take it step by step.
I believe Bill and Ted said it best, just be excellent to each other.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. It's not like a complex problem into like how to treat other people. It's when you get people who try and take advantage of that, that's the problem, right? But the hope is those people out themselves fairly quickly, at least. All right, so there was some discussion earlier, I guess, about L2s and gas, and I think someone brought up EIP 1559 in the chat. I'm kind of curious if anyone has any strong feelings on that. I know it's a little out of our perhaps sphere of influence, given that it's Ethereum related rather than Maker related. But as we're saying, like the issues on Ethereum are affecting Maker in terms of gas fees. So maybe that's fair game if anyone has any thoughts.
I mean, it's basically buy back and burn, which is what we do, right? Sounds good to me.
So I guess maybe, so I know none of our devs are experts on consensus or the Ethereum protocol itself, but does anyone I guess, do you guys have any thoughts on whether it, I guess, what it will deliver in terms of like consistency for gas
does
pricing?
everybody know what EIP 1559 is to begin with?
Yes, that's a good point. Maybe we should start with that. Anybody wants to give a like executive summary? That might be good.
I think there's two components, right? They're going to increase the block size a little bit, but then change the way that the fees are managed. So there will be a base fee that's like the minimum amount that you need to spend on a transaction, and then there's still going to be a fee market. So everything over that base fee will be a tip to the miner, but the base fee for each transaction will get burned, basically reducing the supply of Ethereum immediately, basically turning Ethereum into a deflationary token. And then the miners will still get a profit, but they'll get the tips up and above and beyond the base fee.
Is there an opcode for the base fee?
Yeah, that's interesting. I was wondering that actually, because I think it has implications for your DSS cron module or something, right?
Yeah, it'd be nice if there was. It would allow us to sort of determine whether somebody's paying a competitive gas price or not.
Yeah, I don't know if it's I don't know how it's implemented in the protocol yet.
Yes. So in terms of the block size thing Brian mentioned, I think the way that works is that blocks will be double size, but the base fee will adjust to target that they will be half full, so it is in the same size as now, which gives you kind of more like burst capacity, but should not, hopefully not result in the state size and chain stuff growing any more than it is now. But I think the general goal is that it should bring like kind of stability to gas prices rather than like actively lower them. So like if anyone's expecting it to drastically lower gas prices, I don't think that's going to be the outcome.
Is there any approximate timing on when that is actually going to happen? I've heard estimates all over the place of this summer, or just wait until proof of stake.
As far as I'm aware, the plan is before proof of stake, right? I don't think the plan is to wait, but plans change, so I don't know. Maybe this is something we should come back to in a future call. Perhaps like people that are interested can kind of read up maybe, and then we can kind of have a more nuanced discussion in a future call.
There's also a Ethereum cat herders call on this topic tomorrow. I think I'll post the link. I'll find it.
Okay, so we're like about 20 past the hour. So I think unless anyone has any burning desire to discuss anything else, then we should maybe wrap up for the week. Are there any final points people want to raise? Okay, looks like we're good. So I think we'll leave it there, and I'll talk to you all again next week. Thank you everyone for coming.
Thanks a lot.